Hi, I'm Julian Chidgey and you join me today at Swallowport in Bedfordshire. I'm here on a 48-hour session with my good friend Chris Lambert, and just as the cameras arrived today, we've caught this cracking catfish of 48.5 pounds. You're going to follow me during this session. We're going to look at the methods that I use to tame this one and hopefully a few more beasts during the session. We're going to get this one back and let's have a look at the methods that we're using. Well, that's the first catfish of the trip, safely released. And I think the first thing that we've learned is if you're going to go catfishing, you're definitely going to need a spare set of clothes. Well, we've taken off that set of slimy clothes now. We've put some fresh ones on, and I'm going to talk you through the gear that I use for my catfishing in the UK. Now, a lot of people who think about having a go for catfish for the first time are put off because they think they're going to need really specialist tackle, maybe having to buy a whole new set of rods and reels. This couldn't be further from the truth. I'm just going to show you what I tend to use. We've got 12 foot, 3¼ pound test curve rods here. So your normal carp or pike rods will be perfectly adequate for fishing for catfish in this country. We've got 10,000 size reels. Now, it's important they've got a free spool facility because we're actually fishing off of the free spool, so that when the catfish picks the bait up and runs, obviously it can take line. If we don't do this, obviously we've got the risk of the catfish dragging the rod into the lake, so it's really important that we use that. Now, the one area where we do use something maybe a little bit different from your normal fishing is the main line. Now, if you're going to use normal nylon line, I'd suggest a minimum of 20 pounds. And in this case, where I'm using braid, you want 65 pounds as a minimum. Now, this might sound heavy for both nylon and for braid, but in this lake, we've actually got fish up to over 80 pounds in weight. Combine that with obviously a lot of weed in the lake, a few snags, a few stones. If you're gonna hook the fish of a lifetime, which you've obviously got the opportunity of doing here, the last thing you wanna do is lose it. So we gear up nice and heavy to deal with these very, very hard fighting fish. Moving on from the main line, we've got standard bite indicators on buzz bars on the front here. Now, the eagle-eyed among you will probably notice something a little bit different here. We've got our bobbins and we've actually got them set in front of the alarm as opposed to how we'd normally have them set behind. Now, there's a reason for this. When you're using a lively bait, such as leeches, worms, or live baits that are likely to actually pull on the rod tip, if you actually put the bobbin in front like this, when you get this little bit of movement, it won't actually set the alarm off. But when a catfish takes the bait and swims away and sets the roller going, you'll get normal indication as you would. This is quite important because otherwise, if you're up during the night catfishing, this would obviously keep you awake. So you've still got that good bite indication. So I think sort of talking you through the setup here just goes to show, for those of you that want to have a go for catfish, you don't have to go out and spend a fortune. You've probably already got most of the tackle that you're going to need. Oh, well done, Keith. You obviously used your local experience there to get a daytime capture. That's quite rare on here, is it? Or do you get them during the day a little bit?
They do come during the day, but it's nice to always get them during the day.
Definitely. How big do you reckon that one is?
It's a 20.
Excellent, excellent.
Nice young fish.
It goes to show you don't have to night fish for catfish as well, so good stuff. Okay, should we get that one back in and we'll talk a little bit more about the fishery?
Okie dokie.
Well, we've just seen Keith, one of the owners of the lake, land a cracking catfish. Keith, tell me a little bit more about the lake and the fish that are in here.
Well, we acquired the lake about approximately 2 years ago, and the basic idea for it was to create a catfishing water which was literally for catfishing anglers without having carp and pike present. So we've gradually stocked it, and all the cats that have come here have come from waters where either they haven't got a licence and had to be removed, or possibly could have been destroyed. So by putting them in this lake, we've actually saved them, and because the lake's not a syndicate, it's actually open to anybody to book it and fish. It gives anglers still the same chance to fish for this fabulous creature.
Excellent, excellent. And what's the stock of fish? How many have we got in here at the moment?
Well, there's, at the present time, there's 64 in here. The biggest one is 90 pounds.
Wow.
But there's 20 over 50 in here. And we're just waiting to go and remove a 60 pound albino out of a lake. So that should make things quite interesting in here.
So really, really good stock of big fish and more to come as well.
Yeah, there'll be more to come in the future, but obviously we keep an eye on the stocking levels and we make sure that the predator levels are correct so that the fish continue to grow.
Excellent. And I noticed you've got some quite particular rules to aim it at particular styles of catfishing. What was the thinking behind that?
Basically, I'm an old man and the catfishing I done when I was in my youth, and I'd like people to experience the same thrill and excitement I got when I was catfishing, rather than just sit behind a pair of rods with pellets or boilers on. The whole ethos of this place is to allow people to catfish in the way that you should catfish.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Keith, I know I've really enjoyed my visit so far. Should we get the rods out and see if we can get another one?
By all means, I think we could have an interesting afternoon and evening.
Excellent. Well, we've already seen a couple cracking swallowpool catfish on the bank already. Let's have a quick look at the rigs that we've been using on this session. Starting off, we've got a big, heavy running ledger. In this case, we've got 3 1/4 ounces. This is the type of weight that I'd use if I'm using worm or leech hook baits. And I'd go up to 4 or 5 ounces with live baits to stop the bait being pulled around on the bottom. Now we've got that mounted on a run ring, and that makes sure that we haven't got too much resistance and the line can pass easily through the run ring, and obviously standing proud of the lead, that helps with it stopping getting caught in any weed or any silt when the lead lands on the bottom. Now, to protect the heavy duty swivel that we've got under there, we've got a buffer bead, and that just means that as it slides up and down, the lead won't damage the knot. Now, I normally like a link swivel in most of my rigs here so that I can quickly change rigs. In this case, I take any extra components such as link swivels out of the equation. We want nice simple rigs for catfish. We don't want to put any extra components in there that may let us down when we're fishing for fish of this size. We've got a rig sleeve there, and that just stops us getting any tangles. And then we've got the hook length itself. This is around 12 to 14 inches of 25 pound rigidity, which is a stiff link material, and this means that when we're using baits such as worms, leeches and live baits, the rig won't tangle while it's out there in the water. And if we're leaving a rig out there all night, this is really, really important. Being a nice stiff monofilament, it also stops any sort of abrasion that we may get from the catfish's pads, which is quite important. So 25 pound would be the absolute minimum that we'd use in terms of hook lengths. Moving down towards the business end of our rig, we've got a few different components here, and I'll just talk you through what we've got. As you can see here, we've got a 30mm bait popper, and that's from our Predator range, and this is going to hold our bait up away from the bottom above the weed, and being bright red in colour, it just adds an extra visual element to the rig as well. Now if we follow that down, you'll see that we've got a little stop knot tied with power gum, and that also holds the bait popper in place next to this little rig component here, and that's a rattle bead. And when we've got whether it be a live bait, a leech or a bunch of worms on there, any kind of movement gives us this rattle. And obviously for a predatory catfish that relies quite heavily on vibration to sense its food, this acts like a dinner bell and draws the catfish in. So it's really worth including these within your rigs if you're trying for cats for the first time. There's no room for small hooks in catfish fishing, and we've got a size 1 SSSP hook there, and that's suitable whether we're using, again, worms or leeches and smaller live baits as well. Now when we're using quite lively baits on the hook, it's important that they stay put. So we've got a small red bait flag, and that actually holds the bait in place, keeps it away from the point as well, leaves the point clear, ready to obviously penetrate the mouth of a fish should it grab the bait. Now the way that this rig's fished is a little bit different as well. Those of you that do carp fishing and are familiar with an adjustable zig rig will probably understand the concept of this rig quite easily. As I showed you, the lead is running on the line, and once we've cast the rig out, we'd let the lead hit the bottom and we'd actually open the bail arm of the reel, and this would allow the buoyant poly ball and the hook with our hook bait to rise to the surface. Now once it actually reaches the surface, by pulling line back onto our reel, we can adjust the depth that the bait's fished at. Now on this particular water we're allowed to use 3 rods, so much as if you're fishing zig rigs for carp, what I tend to do is try different depth bands during the day and during the night, actually moving the baits up and down to intercept any catfish. And once you find the depth band that the catfish are moving at, it pays to move all of your rods to fish at that depth, because you'll very often find that they'll be at a particular depth, and that's very often when, for instance in this lake which is stocked with rainbow trout, if the fish are hanging at a particular depth, they'll be moving around actively hunting them. So once you've found that particular area of water, that is often a bit of a killer tactic. So as you can see, it's nothing more complicated than a basic running lead, so you don't need to worry about overly complicated rigs for these very big, powerful fish. Well, it's this time of evening when the excitement really starts to build. As the light levels fade, the catfish are going to be coming out of their daytime layers and actively feeding across the lake. Now we've got 2 live baits positioned out in the lake at the moment. And for those of you that are looking to come to Swallow Pool for the first time, when you book, you can actually book live baits as well, and they'll be delivered for you at the venue, and it's a method that's actually actively encouraged here. It's very sort of traditional predator style catfishing, and as you can see from the bobbins bouncing away and the tips bouncing away here, it's a very exciting method, just waiting for a catfish to come along and smash into that bait. I'm going to get my head down for a while, and hopefully the next time I see you later on in the night, hopefully you'll be leaning into a great big catfish. Well, our second night here at Swallow Pool in Bedfordshire was very quiet. We heard the odd fish striking out in the lake, but unfortunately we didn't get any takes. Absolutely over the moon with the result that we had though. A 48.5 pounder on the first night equalled my personal best, and hopefully the tips that we've shown you and the methods that we've looked at will stand you in really good stead for you to get out there this summer and hopefully land your first catfish.